Welcome back to the show. Get interactive with us. We are live on Facebook, we are on X, we are on YouTube, and of course, myjoyonline.com. Let's start with the issue of illegal mining, because the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Samuel Abujinabo, says an emergency meeting will be convened in the coming weeks to ramp up enforcement measures against illegal mining. The meeting, according to Mr. Jinapop, is ahead of a major crackdown in Galamsey hotspots, especially in the central region, after the devastating impact on water supply. The Ghana Water Company had earlier issued a warning it will shut down some of its production plants due to significant disruption by illegal mining activities and attacks on its staff by perpetrators. The situation is already dire, with water generation already dropped from 70 to 40% nationwide. Residents in these communities are in a state of despair following the damage done to their livelihoods.
Use me.
Sebi, Makana 3 times.
Ankobra River, situated in the western region of Ghana, flows through the Dwaboso and Nzema East districts. Direct mining on the river in many of the communities along its path has reduced its integrity. The Ankobra is contaminated. The 2023 testing of samples from various catch points revealed high levels of arsenic, chromium, cadmium, lead, and other harmful metals from Galamsey.
I know of MMDCs and MPs in some communities who have employed people to do Galamsey for them. Even some chiefs in some communities do Galamsey.
At the estuary, where it joins the sea at Axim, residents of Ankobra town are bearing the brunt of the pollution.
This is what remains of a once beautiful, clean estuary where the Ankobra joins the sea. It is now a milky, polluted river joining the sea here. And it is denying a lot of residents here jobs, tourism, and livelihoods. We are here to find out more.
Assembly member for the area, Patrick Isua, confirms the illegal mining operations in and around the Ankobra are eroding the economic gains of the community.
Due to the Galamsey activities, we have lost 3 things. One is tourism. The second one is the source of water. And the third one is jobs. Why am I saying so? Because it has affected us economically. Yes, so we are suffering. We are suffering because of the Galamsey activity.
The fishermen and the women who sell their catch are out of jobs.
Previously, we used to catch some fishes here at the estuary, but with the onset of the Galamsey, all of them are gone. We used to fish August, September, October, November, December, 5 months, but now we can only fish for 2 months and we are running at a loss.
Houses at the estuary have flooded recently. Former assembly member for Ankobra town, Mr. Morke, believes the silting of the river by Galamsey is to blame.
Now the Galamsey that they are doing is very closer to the Ankobra River. So that's why it's causing the flood in the community, because the sand that they dig and the river that they heap over there flows into the Ankobra River, and now the river is being wide. So the water that comes from the top to this place is more than previous one that we have been seeing. So the Galamsey is directly that's what is giving us problem in this community.
The constant pollution of the Ankobra River by Galamsey is a violation of the right to clean and potable water. Until government finds a solution to this, people's lives will be affected. From the estuary, Ankobra town, reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko.
So, yesterday Parliament had an emergency session, and then they rose after 2 days of sitting to consider key government business. Now, the issue of illegal mining found expression on the floor. Speaker of Parliament, Abambabim, raised concern about the situation, describing it as a disgrace. According to him, some members of parliament and politically exposed persons are enabling Galamsey activities in their communities because they get their campaign funds from Galamsey campaigns. His assertions were validated by the Lands Minister on the Super Morning Show earlier, indicating that the fight is more often than not hindered by some elements in the opposition and his party as well.
Ramp up your enforcement measures, you put in Operation Halt, you start to demobilize excavators and burn them, if you want to call them, burn them, or demobilize equipment used for illegal mining. These same elements goes into the communities and tell them, look, when we come into office, we'll allow you to mine freely, indiscriminately. And this is on tape, it's on video, high-ranking opposition officers on video, on tape. You have another situation where when you ramp up your enforcement regime, then you have elements, some elements, and I say this with qualification, not all, some elements in the ruling party who say, well, the minister is trying to, is taking measures which will cost us the elections, the minister's actions is going to result, or the government actions are going to result in the ruling party losing the elections and this and that. And then the truth also is that you have elements too whom, when you clamp down on them, they will come to you and make a lot of noise about how the party is being too draconian on its measures against illegal mining. But from where I sit and from where government sits, we do not have to be perturbed by any of those considerations.
Right, so we're going to explore this matter because it's a national emergency that, has to be dealt with according to the danger that it portends for this country. And so this afternoon, we're going to have a discussion already. The movements, that's Alan Shemantin's movement for Ghana, movement for change, they have a statement out and they are demanding certain things in that statement. We'll go to that statement for you and I'll also speak to Courage, who is with me here in the studio. Dr. Kenneth Ashigbey is convener of the Media Coalition Against Illegal Mining, and today demanding a declaration of the water bodies as security zone. We also will be speaking to Dr. Richard Salome. He's the General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association, because this has a lot to do with the health of the people, especially in the mining community, and of course me and you, because some of the things that come from mining community end up here in Accra and we all consume. Dr. Eric Jima is a lecturer at the Department of Environment and Safety, University of Mines and Technology, and of course we'll have all of these gentlemen speak to us on this matter. But let me bring in Courage. So Courage is with the Movement for Change, and they've got a statement. What exactly are you seeking in this statement?
Thank you very much, and greetings to you and your audience this afternoon. I think this Galamsey menace is one that has been with us in particularly recent times. It has seen the last administration of President John Mahama and the present administration, and we are worried about the lack of commitment from leadership. This is purely a moral leadership problem. The leadership that we have seen lacks the moral capacity to do right by the very people of Ghana. And that is why we think that it is absolutely important that an immediate stop, an immediate halt is put outrightly on the activities of the supposed small-scale mining. We've realized that anytime you hear small-scale mining now, it is just a decoy name for illegal mining. So
why do you say so?
Because when we talk of illegal activity, it falls within three categories in my view, as far as mining is concerned. Mining in a place that is not supposed to be mined, like water and river bodies. Mining in a forest reserve should not be allowed. And then using inappropriate means, whether chemicals or machinery, to do the mining. And so that is what we have been witnessing. And anytime you talk about this, they have a permit, they have a license. But the essence of licensing is regulation. The reason why you cannot just get up from this way and start mining, and that you need to acquire a license, is so that the authority will check whether, one, you have the capacity, two, is at the designated area that is right for mining, to go and be engaged in that. So the fact that they have licensing, and yet the wrong thing is what they are doing, means that the state is licensing people to engage in an illegality.
But you started by saying that there's leadership failure all around it.
Yes.
But you and I will agree that President Akufo-Addo in 2017 made a bold declaration when he said that he was putting his presidency on the line. Now, there's been several, task force set up in the past to fight this menace. So on the part of leadership, you will say that they've shown some level of commitment to end it. Perhaps the reason why we still have Galamsey as a national, challenge is perhaps me and you, the citizens, that are doing everything to frustrate whatever government has been and still doing.
Not at all, Elton. What we call governance or government is an institution where you and I have agreed to cede part of our sovereignty, our individual sovereignty, our individual rights to property, to life, everything too, with the hope that they will exercise that as authority for our collective good. So the president has been clothed with all the power, all the authority, all the legitimacy that is required to do good by the people of this country. And that is why in the constitutional government, we say, we the people of Ghana. That is what the constitution. So we have already reposed that power in him. I think it's marks of irresponsibility for the leadership to now turn to the people who have delegated the power to them, to now call on the people to do that which they are supposed to do. The president is the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. The president, the vice president chairs the police council. They have direct command. In fact, the security services take their command from the presidency. All right? The president appoints every single MMDC in this country. Okay? So you and I do not come in here. At the end of the day, it is whether the president is genuinely committed to the fight. If he is, he deploys that power and authority that we have reposed in him to ensure that it is dealt with completely. But what we have seen happen is that in the name of licensing, during the NDC era, most of the people who were given the license who were engaged in Galamsey were NDC affiliates.
You have evidence to back this, or you think that because a political party,
Erastus
those who benefit from
Asaredonko,
these licenses are operators of the party?
Erastus Asaredonko, your journalist who has done fantastic work on this, did a lot of work before 2016. And he always tell you that when you go to the local community, they name people who are affiliated to government, who are affiliated to the ruling party involved. When we saw the Operation Halt, immediately after Operation Halt, what we have seen is that when you go to the local community, the names they mentioned are officials and of the government and party that is ruling, and they are assigns. And I saw the short clip you played, they were saying the same thing. All right? So the halt was there to create an opportunity for NPP people to now also get involved. And once NPP people got involved, we saw no action. We only saw inertia from the government. Certainly, Ghanaians cannot be blamed for that.
Yes, I'll come back to sort of perhaps you can tell us what will you do different.
Absolutely.
If you were given the opportunity. But let me go on Zoom. Dr. Eric Jima is lecturer at the Department of Environment and Safety, University of Mines and Technology. Dr. Jima, it's a pleasure to have you here on the Pulse. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon.
So this week, everybody, in fact, it started last week, and this week, of course, there's been a lot of discussion around illegal mining, triggered by that statement issued by the Ghana Water Company, warning of potential crisis with water production if activities of illegal mining is not stopped, especially around their headworks. And that has brought this discussion on the front burner. Now, we've heard the lands minister say that he's going to put together, he's going to consider a meeting to look at the way forward. There's been demand for a declaration of state of emergency in the country because of illegal mining, and then national security protection for our water bodies. Let me ask you, from your professional point of view, what are we doing wrong? The reason why we appear not to have a handle on this very matter.
Thank you very much. Very good afternoon to your cherished viewers. And I think when it comes to issue of illegal mining, as Courage earlier said, it is Galamsey. So whichever name you try to address with is just Galamsey. Now, your question is, what are you doing wrong?
Exactly.
I do not know. What again do you want to see? What again do you want to see? before we know that all that we are doing is wrong. That also, in a way, throw back to you. Because everything is clear. Joy News, you've done the very best in reporting all these cases, predicting to the future of the menace of Galamsey or illegal mining in this country. Has there been any change in our activities? Certainly not. All that we are doing wrong is our attitude and our greediness for wealth. It's just as simple as that. I will not say this in any edited way. We are just greedy for wealth, and we don't care about the future. I don't believe that we don't know. We know. What again do you want to know that if we are causing devastation to the forest, if you are polluting the water bodies, it's a threat to a generation? What again? I don't think we even need a professional to come and tell us this.
So again, from the environment point of view, I mean, the danger that we are causing to the environment, in the next year, 2, 3, or 5 years to come, if this trend continues, what kind of environment are we going to have? Because this is your area.
Thank you very much. When we say environment, it embodies a lot. You can look at the social environment, the physical environment, and maybe the human environment. Now, I will limit it to the physical environment, where I believe that is from which angle you are coming.
Absolutely.
In respect,
yes,
in respect to water bodies and the natural environment, the forest and the land that we have. Now, the danger is that, in fact, we are complicating a detrimental effect ahead of us. Because as it stands now, our arable lands are no longer fertile, of no quality. Our water bodies, we can all see, without even doing any laboratory test, we can know what it's up to. Now, the atmosphere, where we derive our oxygen, we know its state now. So invariably, we have put ourselves in a state where we do not have life. It's just as simple as that. Anything that brings us health, we have done the best we can to truncate it. If you have no good water, what are you living for? If there's lack of food security, in the sense that inadequate food and poor quality of food, what are we living for? No, it's like we want to sit and wait for a day that we will see that we are giving birth to deformed babies, before we will come back and see that all the million that we have could not save us. Maybe that's what we are waiting for.
And those are clear dangers that are awaiting us, already happening.
Thank you. Of a fact, they are awaiting us. And I'm very happy you have on your program a medical professional, a medical practitioner, and he will speak much into this. I will speak from research perspective.
Yes, sir.
And it's clear. We've had data reporting levels of this toxic element in almost all biomolecules, urine, breast milk. So imagine the breast milk that we are feeding a baby with is toxic or is contaminated with heavy metals, predominantly mercury. So what are you feeding your child with? So the danger awaits us, my brother. It's indeed cause for immediate action.
And then, Doctor, it is the case that those who are not involved in the mining activities, and these are locals in some of these communities, perhaps their only means of livelihood is farming. And so they are left with no choice than to also farm alongside the illegal miners. And then the same stream that has served as their main drinking water has now been polluted. Again, they have no choice than to sort of still fetch water, sometimes treat it as to the best of their ability, and then use it for cooking, drinking, and bathing. And so they are open up to all manner of effects that may arise from, being contaminated with mercury and other, heavy metals that, come in contact with the water bodies, and of course the soil that they use to plant food. So the danger may not be restricted to them, but overall maybe a nationwide issue. And the thing is that not much is being done to address it.
Thank you very much. You have given a very nice scenario from the farmland to the market. So the data I'm talking about here is not limited to the Galamseyers. Neither is it limited to we those who live in the mining communities. It's eventually going to be a national issue. Simply because, as you rightly said, most of these people are farmers, and now they have the water bodies being polluted. The point here is that he or she is a farmer and will have to irrigate the crops with which water? So we call it ecotoxicology. So the farmer is going to use the polluted water to irrigate the crops and bring it to the market, where then becomes you your fate. Now, directly to the farmer, as you rightly said, may not have money to mechanize borehole and still be living to a mess of this polluted water, both for bathing, for cooking, and all that you can think of. Now, when we come to exposure to environmental contaminants, either by oral, as in you eating it, ingesting it directly, either by dermal, bathing with the polluted water, or by inhalation, that is the particulate matter in the environment or in the atmosphere. So the life or the trait you're talking about here is not limited to one particular person. We would have been quiet by now if the effect is with the Galamseyers alone. Then we would have been quiet. After all, they are getting their money and they will have the effect directly. They would have been quiet.
Yes.
But it's a cycle on its own, and we cannot be quiet at this point.
So perhaps as an end user of a product that may be coming from a mining area and I may not even know, in the event that I know, would it be your recommendation that I should tread with caution if I'm patronizing such products?
Thank you very much. How careful can you be? That's the question to ask. How careful can you be? You always be eating from the market, and will you ask the seller where he got his produce from? You know, we cannot make it so tough for our livelihood. The issue is just clear. As you already said, you do not know where the customer is coming from which community, from which village. Neither do I also know. The fish that we eat, where are they coming from? From which water body? What is the level of pollution? And the studies have been clear. We have recorded levels of this toxic element in almost all our edibles. Almost all our edibles. Oftentimes, we don't even do it as the field study. Then we go to the field. No, we do basket sampling. We go to the market to sample from the market. That you cannot say is from A or B community, but it is clear that the level is just alarming.
Yeah, so Doctor, before I let you go, perhaps the final question. I know that, when government, launched Operation Halt and Vanguard, your university was chosen to train people in small-scale mining. I'm wondering whether, in view of what you were saying, whether that training didn't go to plan or they've thrown it away, because what is clear is that sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish between a small-scale miner and an illegal miner.
Thank you very much. When Courage made a submission, he talked about the fact that we shouldn't blame the citizens, but rather the government. Yeah, partly I may disagree with him. Yeah, because the whole fight is holistic approach. Now, the University of Mines and Technology has put in much effort in training small-scale miners periodically. And even the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Amankwa, has come out with an innovation that is because the Sikabuchia to have, in a way, help prevent the release of mercury into the atmosphere. These same small-scale miners never adhered to it. They had their own view with all manner of funny stories and excuses. And that they are doing what they've been doing years ago. Nothing has changed. The education is still ongoing. We have not stopped. Even last week, we had some small-scale miners here, and we trained them on an innovative way of doing their activity. But these people are so nomadic. They are so nomadic that, and they are also very recalcitrant. They have their primitive mentality. This is what they've been doing years ago, and they are not willing to change because they want cheap ways of making money. So, in a way, I will come back to Courage. and still agree with him that we need an enforcement. At this point, we cannot bargain. We need an enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Jima is with the Department of Environment at the University of Mines and Technology. Let me bring, before Courage, I'll bring you in shortly. Let me try and get more experts' view on this matter. As you also talk to me about the political angle that you want to pursue in the event that the movement is elected to serve in the country. Dr. Kenneth Ashigbey, also a very prominent voice when it comes to the issue about illegal mining, joins me via phone. So, Doctor, this week, I mean, this matter is again back on the front burner. What I've heard is intentions, but very little, action to deal with what is in front of us. I've heard the Minister for Lands and Forests said, I'm going to convene a meeting to look at the way forward. I've heard the Speaker of Parliament even put the blame on some MPs and accusing them of being part of it, but they didn't mention names, left it at that. I've heard the former minority leader this morning said that President Akufo-Addo should be impeached for failing to fight illegal mining. Now, this morning, the Fourth Estate website published another very interesting article about who are involved in illegal mining. Mentions the current KMA mayor, Samuel Pine. The claim is that he's formed a company with a legal practitioner and are in control of about 5 mining leases and mining in some forest areas. There's the MPP parliamentary candidate for Joabim alone, 25 mining concessions. So the names are coming out. My point is, I've heard intentions, but very little action to give me comfort that something will be done. Is that the same feeling you get?
Well, thank you very much. And I remember that before we started this fight against Galamsey, there was one of the, I think it was after midnight, earlier on in 2017, early part of 2017, and I wrote an article in the Daily Graphic. And the article was titled, was leadership failure that had caused, that Galamsey was leadership failure. And all the things, all the points you make goes just one thing. It is a failure of leadership. It is the complicity of leadership in the crime. It is also the issue of maybe some of them we might say they are incompetent and the reason why we are getting to where we're getting to. And the lack of decisiveness when it comes to implementing the things that we need to do so far as dealing with the scourge of Galamsey is concerned. Because if you have the, apart from all the things you've mentioned, you have the issue of the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. It's out to a company, a Conta Mining.
Right.
Who is responsible for an illegal activity. Not correct there. You have the Minerals Commission, who is the regulator for the sector. And you have journalists like that provide you evidence of what the illegality is. And up to today, despite the petitions of some media coalition against Galamsey, you have situations where the former MC for Bosomefron is caught on tape confessing to an illegality. And this man, all we've seen is that he's in distress.
Yes.
So when that tells you the complicity of leadership and the lack of decisiveness in dealing with the situation. And so, and now we've gotten to a point where we are in a crisis, which has existential implications. We cannot have the Speaker of Parliament, for example, tell us that some parliamentarians are involved in it without providing evidence to the police for these parliamentarians to be and, taking through the rigors of the law. These are the things that if we really are in crisis, the response you have to that, these are the things that we'll be expecting to be happening at this particular time.
But Dr. Parliament as representatives of the people, and yesterday and then Tuesday as well, they had a fine opportunity to sort of bring all these ministers to the floor and ask them very important questions. Yet, all we heard was lamentations from the Speaker and members of Parliament. And now, the house went on an indefinite, leave until when we don't know when they will come back, and it's like we are back to the same issue.
I completely agree with you. So our response to this crisis have not shown that we are people who are in crisis. That you have the situation where the Mine water source for Ghana Water is now recording 14,000 NTUs, where now they are producing only at 25%.
Yes.
You would have expected that Parliament would have said that this is a major crisis. And so because of that, we are summoning all the people and then making recommendations to the president to say that you need to declare the state of emergency. You would have been expecting by this time so that we would be hearing that. It is the reason why for us, the media coalition, come sometime next week, we're trying to mobilize not just the media, but other people, including the trade unions, the religious bodies and all of that. We believe that there should be a crisis response to this particular fight that is, that is in front of us, saving our water budget. So our proposal is that the president declares a state of emergency over the water bodies and the buffer zones that are required. These people who are currently there are obliged to leave there within 24 hours. Anybody who's found there should be arrested. And if you're going to take these draconian actions to save the crisis, our proposal is also, again, that we need to get all the presidential candidates signing on that they all agree to it. So we don't have a situation where anybody then goes back and then starts playing partisanship with it. We all need to be committed to it as a country to say, we are currently in a war, and that's what we are in. We are in a war. And it's an internally generated war. And we need to fight back with the powers that are necessary to ensure that we get our water bodies some life, some respite. Unfortunately, God has also seen how recalcitrant we are. So we are in a drought. And because we're in a drought, the bad situation will even be made worse. So we need to get everybody responding. I'm not saying that now at least we have the journalists also responding, but we need everybody out. And I would share with the president that by now all the MCs, DCs that have their district, these rivers going through them, and they are not dealing with them, start dealing with them. And the regional ministers, if they will not be able to do it, they are changed. It is interesting, and it is important to tell the people of Accra that the Densu that currently we drink from, there is a river in somewhere in the Achin area that the Densu takes its source from.
Yes.
That is the area where the chief went to ban the submission. And now I understand that it is rather this chief that some people are harassing. But that water feeds into the Densu. And so we all should be worried about the fact that when the illegality happens, rather some people. So that is the case that from what I think we need to look into that particular case. Who were the soldiers who went to go and arrest the men who went to follow the chief? Why is it that those who are involved in the illegality, after they are arrested for the first day, they have been released? But these people were kept in overnight before they were released. So we need to get to the bottom of it and make sure that those who are fighting it, we do not allow those who are perpetuating the evil, rather, give them ammunition to come after those who want to preserve our environment.
Yeah, so Doctor, just a final question, two questions put in one. The first one is about the commitment and the political will to act on some of these things and then give us some semblance of confidence that indeed somebody is doing something to make things right. The Asante last week when he distilled the Bushapanyini and the linguists at Sabronum in Ashanti made reference to a National Intelligence Bureau report. And I'm absolutely certain that if a report can be made available to the Asante, same report can be made available to the president. So across the country where illegal money is taking place, the authorities should know who and who are involved. And yet we see very little action.
Elsa, you remember that when this whole fight started in 2017, the former Minister for Land and Natural Resources, Honorable Peter Amewu, shared that there was a National Intelligence report that was shared. And even in our work as the coalition, you get some of these intelligence officers, bring up some of these cases and say, this is what is going on.
Unfortunately, our leaders are not behaving like the way Otufo has done. Because this information, sometimes you don't even need intelligence information.
Yes.
It's clear. So definitely we should know who and who is involved in this. Because if you look again and look at this thing, the excavators that are used, these excavators are not cheap equipment. These excavators are not small equipment. These excavators have, chassis numbers that you can trace to who imported them, who registered them, who it has been sold to. Why is it that we are not able to arrest those people who are behind it? So we know it. So we need the will of the president. When he puts the presidency on the line, we need him to repeat the same thing again. And the interesting thing is that when that happened, we saw the stability of the water improve. Now that we are back at this thing, we need him to demonstrate that because we are in a crisis. And that crisis response has to be in such a way that we're dealing with it. Do you know that some work has been done of even the people who have died in the pit? The numbers are staggering. But
Absolutely.
because nobody is seeing it, we are joking with it. There's a young man who was supposed to be defending his thesis at Tech currently, who has died because he fell into a pit. There's a woman in Konongo, for example, who also went to nature's court and now is no more. And we're sitting down and we're not responding to this thing with the fervor that is required. So yes, we need that political will to deal with this issue. And as the Speaker of Parliament said, the reason why we're not doing all of this is because Galamsey is funding our politicians. And it's not only just the ruling government, it's funding both parts. Then you would say that because the ruling government is the part, they have control. You remember the example again of this parliamentary candidate who went into a community and went to say that if the people come, you can attack them and you can solve it. There was also an example before the 2020 election of an NDC functionary who also went to go and make some very irresponsible statements. Thank God he was removed. He was dismissed by the NDC. But you have elements like that who are doing this thing. And so we need to plead with the president. We need to, petition him and say that he needs to put his presidency back on the line and crack the whip. Because as the professor said, if you don't do enforcement and there are no consequences for this thing is going to continue. In the country that we are in, mining on the water bodies is illegal. And so that one, there's no compromise about it. Most of these water bodies are also fed from the Forestry Commission. And if you look at the work that has been done by the fourth estate, we should be worried. This particular ally that has been passed that enables people to go into the forest reserve is inimical to our survival, and we need to be pushing also for that ally to be revoked.
All right.
Repeat.
Thank you so much. Let me allow you some space to Dr. Ken Ashigbey is with the coalition that is against illegal mines. Thank you so much. Let's understand the kind of medical emergency or health emergency that we are in if this thing is not dealt with and dealt with appropriately. Dr. Richie Salome is General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association, and he will join us briefly with his comments. So, Doctor, I've heard the environmentalists say that our water bodies are contaminated, especially in mining areas. People are growing food in areas, in soils, highly contaminated. Now, the water will end up, they will eventually end up bringing some of the water. The food will end up in the markets, and me and you may not know, but may patronize and take it. What kind of danger are we in if this matter is not addressed?
Well, greetings to you and your listeners. Unfortunately, I couldn't join from the beginning. But then, I think listening to the last bit, we are in a dire situation, and we all know this. Those of us who work in areas where Galamsey is rampant have seen some physical manifestations of these issues. One, as Dr. Ashigbey said, you have on a daily basis people dying on the site, people coming with very terrible injuries. They have various terminologies lacking, various things that they do on the site which are very unsafe. They are not properly clothed. So right from just they themselves who are engaging in it, they themselves are coming with various severe forms of injuries. Some are also coming in dead. because they've fallen into a cyanide pool. The open pit where they wash the ground stones. Some are also coming in with various skin conditions. Some are coming with lung issues. Some are coming with kidney issues. The sad thing is, these people down there who probably are not those benefiting big time from this, when they come to the hospitals, they can't even pay their bills. And most of them end up being abandoned and die. Beyond that, as we've spoken about, the water contamination, let's not also think it's only limited to the rivers. Remember, this water essentially goes in a cycle, and the groundwater itself is at risk. Recently, a friend was drilling water in his house and asked that they do the analysis of the water to be sure that it was safe for his drinking or watering or use for washing things. And they found traces of mercury, lead, and other heavy metals in this.
Here in Greater Accra?
No, this is in BA.
All right.
Now, the groundwater is not limited to BA, it moves. And so it is not as though when it's polluted in, say, BA or up north or in Ashanti region, it stays in BA and then that's it. It moves and percolates. And so the fact that it may not be, Galamsey is not happening in Greater Accra does not mean Greater Accra is not at risk. In fact, Greater Accra consumes a lot of the produce from the farming areas in BA, in Western region, in all these places where actually these are predominantly farming areas. The lead and heavy metals, we have spoken about this multiple times. Professor Sampini has released various reports. We have seen various publications about what lead does and mercury does. Mercury has terrible, deleterious, or actually irreversible effects on many aspects of our body, from the kidneys damages to the brains and to many other parts of our body. Let's remember that some of these are also linked to cancers as well. And once some of these processes occur, difficulty is that we can't even quantify how much is in the water, how much is where, and how much we are drinking or eating through our foods. The effects go beyond just today to affect our children who are drinking this water. And so some will be coming with learning disabilities because their brains have been damaged by some of these heavy metals. You are seeing younger people having various kidney conditions. You may not the mercury aspect, but of course, since many people still don't even have access to put in water, so
Dr. Solomon's line is beginning to act up.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear now. So
you can hear me now.
Yeah, so we've heard a lot of theories about babies born with all manner of deformities, especially from the mining areas.
Yes.
And I mean, sometimes from a layman point of view, you struggle to link it. I mean, how rampant or how pronounced is this?
Well, the point is that if you listen to Dr. Sampini's submission some time ago, who had done some work on this, what he spelled out was that we are beginning to now look out for these things and beginning to map them to the areas where these Galamsey activities and water pollutions and all these things were happening. At first, we were not looking at them. So we were seeing the cases, but we're not necessarily linking them. But now, data is beginning to emerge, showing us that many kids are being born with some of these defects, some with clefts, some with various heart defects, malformed anus, some come with one eye, and various defects that are happening. And this is being linked heavily to these areas. It doesn't necessarily mean that every child born with this defect may have been exposed, but it tells you that there is something to do with the pollution that is going on in those areas.
Right.
And that is why we must begin to take, and not stop at the upstream areas, but this goes all the way. I think recently there was a publication by somebody from KNUST telling us that heavy metals that were upstream have been found all the way in ocean samples, where the samples were taken at the estuary.
This is a very serious situation.
Hello?
Yes, doctor. Yes, please go on.
Yeah. So the effect is widespread because, as I'm saying, it doesn't stop at where the thing is being done. It goes beyond where it is being done, all the way to the seashore, who probably may think that they are not in any way related to the Galamsey activities because probably they don't have gold there. But then the polluted water actually reaches them where they are. And that is where we must act and act now, because it's an emergency. I mean, we can't waste too much time anymore.
My final question, so that I can let you go, is the fact that, I mean, the impact of this affects everybody, regardless of whether you are directly benefiting from illegal mining or not. Doctor, I was saying that the impact of this affects everybody. It doesn't matter whether you are directly benefiting from illegal mining or not. I mean, as members of the Ghana Medical Association, you have members who are serving in some of these communities, and they are exposed as well. So I'm wondering the kind of recommendation you will make to government at this very crucial time of our lives.
Well, I think this matter is a simple and straightforward matter. We must begin to call for a halt of all these activities, be it legal or illegal, and also take stringent actions. Drastic like this require drastic actions, and we must all support that, and also cause the fact that the powers that be, the president, the leadership of the security agencies, Parliament itself must begin to call everybody to order, put a stop to these activities, and let's reset ourselves and look at how to do these things safely, and also allow the environment to breathe and regenerate.
All right, thank you so much. Dr. Salome is General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. And thanks for your comments. And if you are not worried, then I don't know what will get you to be worried. But Courage Nobi is still with me in the studio with the Movement for Change. So you've heard the expert, we've heard those who are the coalition. So my question is, I mean, the way forward.
Yes.
What are you proposing?
Thank you. I think we have put forward a plan, the Great Transformational Plan, and we put that out, I think, in June this year. And in the Great Transformational Plan, particularly from page 77, Alan Kyerematen, the Movement for make a commitment that within the first 2 years, we'll eliminate Galamsey.
How?
That includes aggressively enforcing existing legislation on natural resource management.
There's an LI that was just passed.
Yes,
that
I'll
grants
come to that.
Mining in forest reserves.
Yes, that's a LI 2462, which was passed in 2022. That now allows it. And that is where I always say that both the president and his party, as well as the opposition and 8 parliamentarians, actually support illegal mining. Because together, they passed this law in 2022. So if you check the list that the Fourth Estate have put out, most of the mining leases in the forest reserves were issued between 2022 and 2023.
Immediately after the passage of the LI.
Immediately after the passage. The biggest commitment that they have shown is that they support it and they create the legal arrangement. So Alan Kyerematen, within one of the first acts he will take will be to revoke LI 2462. Get it revoked outright to stop, and then put an outright ban on all these small-scale mining activities through the enforcement. But you see, local people need to be economically engaged.
Absolutely, and we have resources that we can exploit to our advantage. So how do we exploit the resource, but also protect the environment?
Okay, so one of the things that we'll do, you see, we've bastardized licensing, the current arrangement, because LI 2462, it actually empowers the Environmental Protection Agency rather than the Minerals Commission to do that, which is not the mandate of the Environmental Protection Agency if you check the Constitution. So this legal confusion that have been created would have to be resolved by consolidating all provisions on natural resource extraction. That is one. When that has been done and you put a halt onto it, you now create a business model. And that is what Alan is promising, a business model that allows particularly young people in these areas to participate, because what is happening now, they are just fronts, all right? But also, more importantly, where you can actually create more meaningful jobs is in the secondary and tertiary stage of the industry. So Alan Kyerematen says the Western region will be developed into what we call the Minerals Development Hub of West Africa. What that will do is create factories, industries, companies that add value to these natural resources, so that 60% by 2030, you're saying that 60% of all our natural resources that we mine from the ground will be value added. When you have done that and people are meaningfully employed in these jobs, there'll be very little want to go and endanger their lives in the kind of mining that we are seeing. So aggressive enforcement. That aggressive enforcement would include, and not limited to where necessary, putting the military in the forest reserves and on the water bodies to aggressively enforce, including where their lives are challenged, a shoot to kill. Because
to kill.
Absolutely.
But that will be infringing on their rights.
No, but of course. So this is happening. If at this level, the very survival of the state is threatened,
I understand.
and the military has a mandate to protect the territorial integrity of the nation. So
but to empower them to shoot and kill, that will be going to the extreme.
That's why I said that where necessary, because what we are seeing...
Should that even be introduced into the conversation?
Of course, because from Erastus's documentary, some of these people are armed. Some of these illegal miners are armed. And there's been an occasion where they've even attempted to exchange fire with the military. So we cannot have a military that is powerless. So if it would take such drastic measures to stop it, so that within the 2 years we'll stop it, because this must be stopped. No two ways about it. And we cannot treat it with kid gloves. For me, that is the point. We've been treating it with kid gloves since 2013. So if we are concerned, we must be ready for drastic measures. And that's why we say aggressively enforce the laws on that. And part of that aggressive enforcement, I'm saying where necessary, would have to include that. Because after a whole ban, and all the arrangements have been put in place, if you see me with a chanfan on River Pra, and to make it worse, I'm welding, what's the name, weapons, I must be taken down in the interest of protecting the state. We are in a crisis, and we cannot use conventional means to deal with this. Exactly.
There are those who say that, I mean, when you are sitting on the fence, it's very difficult to criticize and offer all manner of suggestions. Yeah. When you are in the saddle, it's very difficult to implement those things. So then the question comes back to us about the commitment and how, why should we even trust you in the first place to say that you will do things different? Okay,
I have always said that the reason why Galamsey is still with us, and I'm glad for the output of the both Erastus and the Fourth Estate, that the president himself is complicit.
How?
His family members and assigns may be complicit. And then his political party officials, affiliates and assigns are complicit. When these three levels are occurring, if any of this is occurring, it complicates the matter for them. They can't handle it. What I can assure you is that Alanche Martin has never been involved in anything mining, let alone illegal. It's not, none of his family members are involved, and none of his associates or assigns, including myself and the members of the Movement for Change, are involved. That is why he would not find it difficult.
We can also point out any relation of the president who is involved in mining.
We don't know it for a fact yet. But if you see what's happening in the Tiwa Mountain Range, I'm sure when this investigation lands there, we definitely. But we know Gabi Ochedakun.
He's taking the matter to court, which means that he's disputing that fact. No, and he's taking the matter to the court has yet to pronounce on it.
Of course, we know that in matters of law, many times it's technicalities that it's not about establishing the truth or facts of it. But is it not intriguing to you that when the minister responsible and chair of the interministerial committee was dealing with the problem, you had the president's nephew, Gabi Ochedakun, pick a phone to call him to instruct him? Is that standard procedure in law?
I'm saying that is a matter that Gabi has taken to court, saying that never happened, and he's disputing it, and he's seeking legal redress. So the matter is, so let's leave it. Until we get to the point where the court says that you were right or wrong, then we can have that discussion. But he's denied it completely, and he's taking legal action against the professor.
Because if we had the president himself say that he's putting his presidency on the line, if he meant that sincerely, he should have resigned by now. Yes. So the fact that he's denying this thing, because yes, that's fine. But my point is that all of the reason why this is happening, this has not been solved, is because of complicity. And that is why the leadership lacks the moral capacity to do right by the state. What he is doing, what the president is allowing to happen, is threatening the very existence of this country. And that is why I am glad. I mean, in 2017, the entire nation was behind the president. Ken Ashigbey, doctor, from the media coalition that was behind the president. The president had all the goodwill that he needed to deal with this. But I'm saying this complicity is the reason why he's not been able to deal with that. We know that before this time, the people who were named were associates and assigns of the NDC under President Mahama's regime, using again the Minerals Commission to grant them licenses. And so that lack of political will on the part of leadership, lack of moral leadership, is the reason why we have this. In Alanche Martin, you have somebody who have a proven track record of demonstrated integrity in public office. That is why you can trust him to deal with this matter head on.
Courage, thank you so much for coming through.
It's a
and of
pleasure,
course, this
always.
discussion will continue because we are in an emergency situation that requires all hands on deck. We'll take a short break here on the platform. We'll come back. There's been many fires in Ghana, especially here in the Greater Accra region. The Ghana Fire Service, they've been out and about. We'll have the very latest on what we are witnessing in the capital when we return from this break. You're welcome back. This is the pulse here on Joy News, and let's move to some other stories now away from illegal mining. And the Economic Community for West African States, they've commenced a mediation engagement for interest parties ahead of the 2024 general elections. In partnership with the National Peace Council, the Commission said it is doing all it can to ensure that Ghana's leadership role in consolidating democracy is sustained. Speaking to the media at the start of engagement this morning, the head of mediation at ECOWAS Political Affairs Division, Constance Nakaja, called on all stakeholders to embrace peace in order to safeguard Ghana's enviable track record.
And this activity is a follow-up from the fight funding mission. You know, ECOWAS, in all its member states, whenever there is an election, send a fight funding mission. So what we find, we can not stay back. We do come back to interact with the stakeholders to make sure that anything that we perceive, we foresee may affect the running of a peaceful election, we engage with the stakeholders to make sure that we have peaceful and participatory election. That's why we are here. I have said several times, peace, inclusive, participatory. So Ghana is an icon in West Africa. So when we are counting member states that are models in democracy, Ghana is one of the champions. So we want Ghanaians to know that they have only one country. Whatever will happen, they need peace. The war in the world, the world lords are still discussing. They are negotiating. So there is no need to be violent. I think dialogue, negotiation is very important for the stability, for the growth of the citizen, and for the integration of ECOWAS region.
Meanwhile, the National Peace Council says it is working to resolve the conditions set by the National Democratic Congress, as the NDC, which will pave the way for the main party to sign onto the peace pact. The NDC for this has declined the invitation from the council to sign the document citing post-election related killings at Techiman South, amongst others, as the reason for not committing to the peace pact. However, speaking at the same event, the National Peace Council says it is making progress on resolving the outstanding issues. George Amo is Executive Secretary of the Council.
So there are conditions, and at any mediation table, that is what happens. People will bring their positions, and you help them adjust and build to a place of consensus, and that is what we are trying to do. We are talking to others who we believe can do something about the issues that the NDC raised. Already, we can see some signs. The Techiman issue, the court has ruled. And these are positive signs, and we want to encourage that we do that. We will do everything within our mandate to ensure we address any outstanding difference before the December election. And we are hopeful that all the parties will agree to sign on to a peace pact. Negotiation, mediation, dialogue, they have always been enduring mechanisms for addressing differences, and we want to encourage that. And also to inform Ghanaians. The world has shown us a lot of examples that war and violence can never bring development, can never help democracy to grow. So we have an option. The option is to build on the gains we have made as a people. We've done this for more than 30 years. I don't see why we cannot do it this time around. So let us do all that we can to address the differences we have as a people, but have a Ghana that is at peace with itself after December as our objective. And let's work towards that.
Well, we'll stay a little longer on some of these engagements ahead of the 2024 elections. And the United Nations Resident Coordinator for Ghana, Charles Abani, is urging all political actors to pledge peace as campaign activities intensify ahead of the general elections. He emphasized that hate speech, disinformation, and misinformation are major threats to Ghana's upcoming elections. Speaking at the opening of the 2024 ITU Interpol Cybersecurity Drill at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center here in Accra, Mr. Abani stressed the need for all stakeholders to prevent these issues from tarnishing the success story of Ghana's democracy.
The 2024 ITU Interpol Regional Cybersecurity Drill for Africa, hosted by Ghana at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center, brought together top security experts and Interpol. Various speakers, including the Director General of the Cybersecurity Authority, Dr. Albert Ntwibo-Isiako, emphasized the need for a unified front to combat the rising threats of cyber attacks. Speaking to the press, Director of International Affairs at the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization, Kwame Ba Achemfo, stressed the urgency of tackling the escalating cyber threats as the elections draw closer.
2 years ago, incidences were happening, cyber threat incidences were happening every 44 seconds. But now it is at the rate of 39 seconds, which means that many persons are interested in the multi-billion-dollar industry of cybercrime. Ghana is the third in Africa when it comes to a robust net, when it comes to cybersecurity. And we indeed desire to be the best in Africa. So it is a continuous building and improvement of our cybersecurity systems. And irrespective of it being an election year, we will strive to deter and prevent all cyber threats.
Meanwhile, the UN Resident Coordinator for Ghana, Charles Abani, is urging political actors to ensure hate speech, disinformation, and misinformation do not mar this year's elections as cyber threats escalate.
The UN has been very clear that one of the key threats to the elections is the challenge of misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech. And we all know that technology can be manipulated to produce some fairly realistic-looking images and sounds, and also because of the pervasive use of social media, it's possible to reach millions and millions of people at once. And so the biggest challenge is that we have a peaceful election that is inclusive, that is transparent and accountable, and that is not marred by division, which hate speech, disinformation, and misinformation.
Mr. Abani also urged all political parties to find a common ground and commit to signing the Peace Pact before the December polls.
A peace pact is an important demonstration of the intention to conduct elections peacefully and successfully. And I think it's important to urge all the parties to find the compromises and the conversations necessary and the pragmatism necessary to ensure that we have a peace pact signed. And I know that there are many actors in support of this. And I think I'm confident that all the parties will come to the table when the time is right.
Some participants believe the cyber drill will strengthen collaboration, leading to more effective combat against cyber threats.
This event will help to different organizations to find more suitable collaborations. It will be also useful for finding new knowledge, or maybe find some useful use cases and share experience for different organizations. And I hope that our cybercrime community will be grow, and also we can find new cyber criminals.
The 2024 ITU Interpol Cyber Drill for Africa aims to assess and enhance Africa's cybersecurity readiness, promote global cybersecurity standards, and foster regional collaboration and knowledge sharing in the fight against cyber threat. For Joy News, Carlos Caloni, Accra.
I will take a short break and return with more here on The Pulse. Welcome back. Let's have our final discussion and then we can wrap up the show for today. Now, in the last few weeks, we've been breaking down the manifesto of the NDC for you. Today, we take a look at what the MPP is offering. Our focus this afternoon is on cost of living. It's a very important subject in the country now, and it relates to job and other issues. What is the MPP manifesto promising? Now, in the studio this afternoon is Akosia Menu, the parliamentary candidate for Adenta and co-chair for MPP Manifesto Youth and Sports Committee. So, Honorable in the making, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon.
And how is Adenta doing?
It's well, it's very well. Tomorrow the Vice President will be visiting.
Oh.
And we're looking forward to it.
Adenta has always been one term. So you expect to go through?
I expect to go through. Swings my way and I hold on to it.
Okay. Now, in terms of cost of living, I'm sure you come from a constituency where there are so many issues around it. Let's start from your constituency. Okay. And the promise for them in terms of how you want to improve their standard of living so that they can afford the cost of living as we have it today. Okay, so Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's plan to reduce the cost of living is something that I believe is very practical. And even if adopted as a national action plan, it would help to alleviate the burden that Ghanaians have faced in the last couple of years when, admittedly, post-COVID, the president and vice president have admitted the challenges that we have. Now, when it comes to cost of living, three things that get impacted that people feel immediately is food costs, is transportation, is also energy. So when prices of food goes up, people complain. And I know your journalists here quickly take to the streets to get sound bites. People to speak to. Yes. But anyway, all of them appear to be linked. They are all linked. They complement each other. Yes, they complement each other greatly. Transportation goes up, it affects food, and vice versa. Now, as far as cost of living goes, when it comes to food, in the manifesto, the Vice President captured stabilizing foods produced locally. Now, the beauty of this manifesto is that as far as funding components are concerned, especially when you ask, how are you going to fund this? It's directly linked to an institution or a framework that already exists for the most part that will support it. So for instance, upscaling the production of staple foods. We've seen perennial shortages of staple foods like tomatoes, sometimes plantain. I know the plantain wars happened with people making all sorts of comparison. The former agric minister, when he made that intervention of sending food produce when he actually set up a market at the ministry. Yes, and we saw the stark difference in pricing. So upscaling the production of staple foods, as well as preserving staple foods, investing in it, meat, poultry, fish products. Fish is not exempt. We see the prices go up all through the year. However, if we invest in the preservation, it would mean a constant supply all year through. Now, this guarantees from Development Bank Ghana, as well as Ghana incentive-based risk sharing system called GESAL. When you go on their website, you realize that their focus is on reducing the risk of agricultural business. So it's not something that is not that doesn't exist. It's actually there. They've already spent close to 1.2 billion cedis on agri businesses and helped over 137 businesses already. So it's something that would go a long way to impact that. Then reducing the cost of public transportation, like we said, the introduction of e-vehicles. Perhaps maybe a little longer on the food. Okay. Before we get to transportation, perhaps, and then energy as well. So food, some of the things you can control. Some it is beyond you. Yes. Some are natural occurrence. Now we are having issues with the dry spell. It is a natural occurrence that resulted in scarcity of food in the north. So how do you deal with such things? Are there plans to say, let us construct these interventions to store when we have them in abundance? Okay. And then in terms of, in the lean season, we can rely on that. So the beauty of technology is having to, especially with agriculture, is having to have produce all year round. If you have greenhouses, for instance, where you are farming even off-season. Right. So it is not impossible.
there have actually been a number of farms that have already been onboarded. But we are looking at upscaling it on a larger scale. It also means that warehouses will come on board to store produce. And we'll have to ensure that between, for instance, the conversation about tomatoes, for instance, people say, you know what, let us have it. We even freeze it, and it's still good to consume. So it is possible to actually do this and to reduce the cost of.
And then your opponent said, I'll set up farmers center. You're in terms of helping farmers with whatever they need so that they can produce and produce more, because it all ties down in the issue of food security. I don't know how your approach is.
The stark difference between us and them is that, especially with this manifesto, where the support will come from is clearly outlined. So Development Bank and the Ghana Incentive-based risk-sharing system that I spoke to you about. So it is not like we are pulling things out of thin air. It's upscaling. Why? Because we already rolled out Planting for Food and Jobs.
Right.
We've assessed its challenges. The current Minister for Agric, Brian Champong, a very amazing young man, has done so well in taking it up to Planting for Food and Jobs 2.
Part 2.
Part 2. And we are seeing the impact of it. In the last few years, Ghana has been the biggest exporter of yams. So it is possible for staples to be grown in abundance all year round. So we've seen evidence of it already. So I believe that based on what is captured, we will ensure that we commit.
Now let's talk about transportation.
Yes.
Public transportation.
Yes. Now public transportation, we've seen the agitations, especially when prices of fuel goes up.
Yes.
But even so, there's a need to pivot from fuel sources to modern technology. So for instance, supporting electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, as we speak, I saw an article on one of our African countries which has successfully rolled it out. And
is it Rwanda or Uganda? Because Rwanda have done something similar.
Rwanda has done something similar.
Uganda is also moving there.
It may be Uganda. I may be, yes, I'll check it. Now, for instance, also continuing to expand the gold for oil policy, which was a very timely intervention to, mitigate the cost and the rise of fuel. What is also very crucial is for us to notice the intervention when he becomes president of a flat rate for all importers, which would ensure that we can predict and stabilize prices of imported goods. We all know spare parts dealers and the challenges when there's the CD-dollar differential amongst others. Ensuring a flat rate for all importers gives some stability and helps to predict. It helps your business. It helps you to plan your business. It helps you to know your inflows and outflows and, to plan better. Then the last bit is the inconvenience that we have of having to renew our driver's licenses often.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. And then
but mine just expired, so...
Yours?
Yeah, of course.
Which means now,
yes.
yeah, wow, do we catch
you know.
So making driver's licenses valid for 10 years is the consideration, renewable every 5 years. And I think it's a long enough time for people not to always be burdened with going to renew every 2 years.
In terms of public transport, I mean, already we have some on our hands. We have the Metro Mass. But I'm particularly interested in, for example, the rapid buses. We have Ayalolo. I remember when I was a parliamentary correspondent and Ayalolo was introduced, they picked MPs for a town ride. I was part of it. And then they lobbied the MPs to back a proposal for a bill that was on its way to Parliament.
Okay.
So that some dedicated rules will be given to the buses.
Yeah.
So that they can move without any kind of hindrance from other commercial vehicles. From that time up until now, that hasn't happened. And that, for the operators of the Ayalolo buses, is the reason why they haven't made the impact that they should have done by now. 100 buses at that time.
Okay.
You've traveled a lot. You know the situation in London. And so what is the plan to make it? Because if public transport is very viable, I'm sure the issue about fuel prices going, everybody is complaining, will be a thing of the past. People will park their vehicle and actually use public transport. There may be train, that is for a broader conversation. I don't know if there's a plan to make this lawful such that it becomes an integral part of our transport system?
I think the time that you had the
Ayalolo,
experience of Ayalolo was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, of course. This was the NDC time, actually.
Yes. So if we're to go back to those buses, some may even be obsolete if it hasn't been used. You know how assets like that diminish the minute they leave showrooms or, whatever you want to call it. But the consideration now is how do you reduce the burden on the average Ghanaian? So one of the plans as far as energy is concerned is adding 2,000 megawatts of power to the grid, where we are looking at solar possibilities as well. So electric vehicles, when powered, doesn't necessarily run on fuel, which we have to either, buy sometimes to complement what we already have, and which adds to the cost of transportation. So then, e-vehicles makes it easier. And when I say it's electronic vehicles. Nobody thinks it's elephant vehicles. So e-vehicles, which would be considerably cheaper, would mean that the cost is cheaper. Even if it does replace Ayalolo, I believe it's better. Because one, we are also moving to a point where we have to reduce our energy bypass or, as far as emissions are concerned, exactly. So that is pivoting towards something that is greener, for one, and then cheaper for the consumer. So if you roll these out, like you said, other countries have successfully done, then it helps to reduce the cost for the industry. And
at the news conference, the Vice President was quite clear that even the new buses that will be coming in for the MMT, it will be, powered by, by charging instead of fuel.
So Ayalolo runs. The longer a vehicle runs, you know that maintaining it and, keeping it going sometimes becomes more expensive. But we need to augment it, right? It's not to say that Ayalolos will be parked. Some already in the system quite well, and like you call it, rapid buses. But to augment it, we need to reduce the operational cost. Reducing the operational cost ultimately reduces the burden on the consumer. So if you are using 25 CDs or 40 CDs a week, depending, not even a week, probably a day, depending on where you are going within a certain vicinity, it would mean that when these e-vehicles come, it could even be 10 CDs a day, which ultimately impacts your pocket, means you save a little, helps you to budget better. So I think it's a worthy consideration.
Before we wrap up, let's talk about energy. Even though in the last few days we've seen reduction at the pumps, some will argue that it's so high.
Yes, energy is really high, but I was doing a quick check with neighboring countries, and I think that we are still significantly lower. So fuel is cheaper in Ghana than in Ivory Coast. Even though I remember at a point people said, oh, Ivory Coast is cheaper than Ghana, but the gold for oil policy made it easier for us to come to where we are now. But plans to reduce the cost of living, like I said, is bringing on stream 2,000 megawatts of solar power. And you mentioned the UK, which I love the example of you going there, because often people will say, why are you introducing comparing us to other countries? But over there, your consumption of electricity, even when you reduce the consumption, you are given some points. Right, and rewarded for that as well. So by incentivizing users to buy excess power they generate from solar systems, that way you free up the grid. And then when we need power, we certainly know how to measure it. So energy, as far as I'm concerned, we've done significantly in the last 7 years or 8 years on it. The current Minister of Energy, I think in the last onboarded another, I'm confusing the information, but let me come to basically the point I'm making, that there's a firm promise to make power affordable. There's a firm promise to add 2,000 megawatts of solar power to the grid. There's a need for people to also pivot from the main grid to look at solar sources. And I believe many people are actually doing that in some homes. It's not to say that it's a very cheap especially getting it.
I mean, getting the infrastructure done is quite expensive.
Quite expensive. But ultimately, once you get it done, they realize the impact easily on.
Before I let you go, as you speak to Ghanaians, I mean, going to the manifesto, and you've been in power for close to 8 years now, and you are seeking to stay in power. Your opponent has been there before, and also seeking a comeback. Why should Ghanaians stay with the MPP, despite all the challenges that we've seen?
So my thing is, when assessing the viability or the integrity of candidates and their manifestos, Ghanaians look at what you say you would do and then vote.
What you have done.
That's what, yes, and what you've done. In the year 2008, by the time MPP won by Kufuor, former President Kufuor was leaving power, we could count policies like free maternal health care, school feeding program, health insurance, amongst others, which impacted a lot of Ghanaians. They were policies. By the time the former president, who is now seeking to come back into power, left in 2016, there was not a single policy or single overarching social intervention by them. Fast forward, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo comes with a promise of free SHS, amongst others, and he delivers on the promise with 5 million plus beneficiaries, which is impact. Now, on the same assessment of our manifesto, I believe you in this very studios assessed our 2016 manifesto, and by 2020, when we were going to the polls, you gave, it was across board, 74 to 75% achievement of what we said we had done. This was the media vetting us. So based on that, as compared to somebody who had 280 promises or so, and only did 26, which is less than 10%. I believe comparing 75% to 10% is clearly a non-starter. So we have to look at the things we said in the context of the challenges that both parties faced. One didn't have any global challenges, didn't have once in 100 years pandemic, didn't have a war that had its ramifications in developing countries, compared to the MPP, hit by a once in 100-year pandemic, hit by the challenges of a Russian-Ukraine war. No matter what we say or do, these issues hit us terribly. COVID hit us. If you look at the numbers, especially with even inflation before COVID, their time and our time, you'd see the difference of inflation before COVID and inflation after COVID. So on this alone is a clear assessment that Ghanaians should stick with the party that delivered primarily on its key promise, which was free education. When I say free education, Elton, you would have been in class and people stopped coming to school because their parents couldn't afford school fees. That challenge is out. People dropped out of school because a parent died, because maybe their guardian passed away, and it truncated their education. And we know what education does for families. Sure. It raises and changes the destinies of people. Of God, we should, of course, we always keep that in mind as we pray as well. You pray, you do your bits. But the policies and the interventions have gone a long way to change.
All right, let's leave it here. Hopefully to see you again here in the studio. Sakosi Amenu is the MPP parliamentary candidate for Adentan here in the Greater Accra region, and we'll be talking about the party's manifesto on the cost of living, transportation, energy. We'll have another session next week. But for more stories, log on to our website, myjoyonline.com. That's our show for today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, for another exciting edition of The Pulse. Whatever you are up to in the hours ahead, I hope is profitable. My name is Elton Gobe. Have a good evening.